30, the dramatic moment, then delayed by rain. The first ball of a test series between England and Australia, delivered with his natural grace by Mackenzie, and bowled to the most interesting young cricketer in England, Geoffrey Boycott, playing his first test innings. Unspectacular, almost unobtrusive, but a batsman in the Yorkshire manner, never out of line, almost savage in his concentration. At the other end, Coring bowled the first ball of his test career to Fred Titmus, comfortingly sound so far as English followers were concerned for a makeshift opener. He was sent in first because Edrich reported unfit on the morning of the match. Boycott dropped when he'd made 6, justified those who described him as cast in the mould of Herbert Sutcliffe by playing the next ball as if nothing had happened. But he and his friends felt a great deal happier when, coming out of his unwinking defence, he hit Hawke assertively through the covers for 4.
And try not to give the bowler anything, because I don't expect he'll give me anything.
Rain livened up the wicket, and the batsmen struggled in the gloom. Towards the end of the 85 minutes play before the rain closed down, there were a few aggressive gestures by Dexter, but he and England could count themselves lucky to lose only 1 wicket for 52 runs in those conditions. The tone of the second day was set in its earliest minutes. Dexter set out to carry the fight to Australia, but the pitch had none of its traditional generosity to batsmen, and though he escaped O'Neill's attempt to catch him, Dexter survived only to the next ball. The hour after that showed Boycott and Cowdrey doing what English batsmen probably do best, playing on an awkward pitch. There were some to say that, for lack of experience, the Australian bowlers didn't exploit the wicket as they might have done, and certainly they didn't always make the batsmen play at the ball. Nevertheless, some difficult bowling was handled with something very near to mastery by Cowdrey and Boycott, until Boycott, only 2 short of the 50 he'd earned, and anyway, to prove England's top scorer, was out to such a catch as makes Bobby Simpson the world's finest slip fieldsman. Hawke probably was unlucky only to take 3 wickets, but Levers, starting late, showed that he'd learned more than a little about off-spin since he came to England. For the rest of the time to lunch, Barrington stayed with Cowdrey, but in the afternoon, once Cowdrey was out, no one stayed very long. Some of them barely any time at all, though the Australians dropped more catches than their sides usually do. Sharp and Allen hung on, not trying to force the pace. Inexplicably, as it seemed to those who clamoured for an English declaration, they stayed until the last of the rain stoppages, when Allen was caught off Mackenzie by Grant. Sharp, metaphorically speaking, kept his pads on until Monday, for Saturday was tragically washed out. And then Dexter declared. Cold will always poses problems for those unaccustomed to the movement of the ball in English conditions, and Truman has never been one to extend mercy to non-batsmen. So, for all Simpson's top score of the Australian innings, his supporters were cut down, and England were left with a first innings lead of 48. Because Boycott had broken a finger fielding, Dexter opened the second English innings with Titmus, an extremely unexpected pair, and an extremely unexpected innings, for in the grim grey light that was the setting of this test, Dexter proceeded to play as only he among current English batsmen can play. The beginnings were anxious, sometimes almost desperate. Then, beyond the power of bowlers or fieldsmen to curb him, he was galloping away. The great innings often come when no one expects them. Why should this one have happened? Yet it did. Happened unforgettably for anyone who saw it. Suddenly, Vividly, England had taken such a grasp on the game as it hadn't known before. On the fifth day, the game twisted again. Dexter. The English batting, which had seemed secure, first congealed and then threw itself away. And after England had scored at only 50 an hour, they asked Australia to make 242 at 76 an hour. And Australia didn't shrink from the challenge. Laurie set himself one run too many. And then the Truman-O'Neill battle was joined once more, to be suspended, not settled, by a retired Hurt when Australia were not far off their run rate. And then when, given good weather, we might have seen one of the greatest of all finishes between England and Australia, the rain, the last infuriating word. The crowd, patient as Job, day after day, the crowd got up and slowly walked away. The same sky that lowered over Trent Bridge had moved on to Lord's. Thursday and Friday were days of seemingly endless mopping up. Saturday was the day of Truman. Out of form, out of wickets, if some critics had been selectors, out of the test team. He began bowling faster than he'd done all the season to his old enemy, Bill Lawrie, and their particular battle was closely joined from the start. This time, it went to Truman. Then, immediately, came yet another Truman-O'Neill duel. There was too little of O'Neill for the crowd's liking. Did Dexter feed his hook deliberately? Did he give him this 4 in exchange for his wicket off the next ball? There was Gifford, the third Worcester bowler in the series, starting his test career. Redpath, growing into the game, studiously yet strongly. Dexter making a truly horrid catch look simple. Tom Vevers, in a real saving innings, digging Australia out of the near disaster of 88 for 6, batting better and more assuredly than his predecessors. But above all, it was the day of Truman's last laugh. 5 wickets for 48. Australia out for 176 sounded like a 3-day match. A few minutes of rain, and then the promise of a fine evening. But Dexter, opening in place of the injured Boycott, gave only a single hint of a bright evening session before he was gone. This quick, vital blow changed the balance of the game. One moment, England were poised to attack. And next, the duty of Edrich and Cowdrey was to resist Australia's justifiably high spirits and play for Monday. On that second day, which but for the weather would have been the fourth, John Edrich reached the high point of the cricketer's ambition. He scored a century in his first innings against Australia and at Lord's. His partners came and went. Cowdrey and Barrington were quite brief. Parfitt hinted at great aggression, while, somewhat unusually, two Norfolk-born cricketers were batting together for England. 83 for 4. Then, mindful no doubt that the pundits have always declared that English batsmen, and those from Yorkshire in particular, play leg spin badly, Simpson went on himself against Sharp, only to be met with a series of blows which the Yorkshiremen of the past might have regarded, if the word was in their vocabulary, as somewhat overweening. It couldn't last, but it helped England to 138 before it ended. All this time, Edrich, with his grimly upright stance, his strangely boyish look down to make sure that his bat is in place, bristled with all the family hostility towards all England's opponents. He made an impressive character, if not of style, for John Edrich has all his family's courage, application, concentration. Perhaps the best word is simply guts. John Edrich earned his century the hard way, and it must have been the more rewarding that it received royal congratulations, a storybook ending to a piece of brave endeavor. Edrich had achieved much, but he was never allowed to dominate. Australia never let England, even with one batsman firmly set, pull clear. Their fielding was tight and hard all day long. They harried England down to a lead of 70, which could just possibly be important if Australia cracked in the hour and a quarter of batting left for them that night. At this point, tactics demanded that England threw in everything for quick wickets, and Australia resisted. The attack on Laurie's leg stump, now an established gambit, was concentrated ball after ball after ball. Laurie has encountered this before, and the record books show a profit on his side. At the other end, Ian Redpath continued to grow up, his stature increasing day by day. It was Gifford, in the first introduction of spin, who took the wicket of the evening. If a second had fallen, it could well have precipitated crisis. O'Neill, not without the occasional handsome flourish, averted the danger and stayed with Redpath until 6:30. It would strain the longest cricket memory to recall a day of test cricket so short and indecisive as the last of this second test, which yet aroused so much and such acrimonious discussion. The situation was, simply enough, that it was a cricketing impossibility, if there is such a thing, for England to lose, so they could crowd Australia, but they didn't. O'Neill went, as he's gone before and will go again, still showing a profit from the stroke, hooking. Then, on down the morning, the endless bout of seam bowling was rolled at the Australians. They scored 65 runs before Titmus demonstrated, ironically enough, that only spin was likely to prove effective against these batsmen. Burge, full of good sense and resolution, and Redpath, cool and thoughtful against pace, were both less assured against spin. In fact, Ian Redpath didn't score a single run after Titmus began to bowl. He stayed for 53 minutes with his score at 36, until at last the barracking and slow hand clapping rattled him. He swung all across the line to Titmus and was LBW. Gifford and Titmus in double harness kept Booth in a state of trepidation. Even Simpson didn't look the player in form that he'd so evidently been for the previous month. Australia were 98 ahead, and there was little more than 3 hours left for play when not Titmus, nor Gifford, nor Dexter, nor Simpson, but the recurrent enemy of them all, the rain,